Welcome to News Goblins, the weekly nerd news podcast that is late this week because we drove to Florida to see the SpaceX Falcon Heavy launch. I'm one of your hosts, Leslie.
And I'm Jared. And we shot a rocket at the sky
We
in
did.
defiance of God.
Of God and fate
I guess we didn't
and
personally.
gravity. We were part of it.
Let's
We were very small.
credit where credit is due. I don't
Part.
think they could have done it without us.
They absolutely could have done it without us.
You don't know that. The launch was pretty successful, and we were there at NASA. So I don't know.
Do you know what just occurred to me?
What?
You talked me into buying this very attractive NASA Apollo bomber jacket.
It's pretty cool.
But it is going to make a lot of noise.
It's fine. All right. Erase it. Let's start
No.
over.
No. I like it. I'm
Damn it.
staying with it.
Fine. Now you're going to have to put a picture up. See, this is an audio medium.
I will
and
put
if
a
you
picture.
talk about
All
a
right.
thing, now you're going to have to put a picture up.
Well, we're also going to post our video
Oh, that's
in
right.
which I show it off because I'm very proud of it.
Yeah,
so.
we took a video
We did.
because Leslie managed to not cry for about 5 minutes out of
the total.
2 hours.
I started crying before we got in through security. Like I was just standing in line looking up at the rockets above the buildings and crying.
She had on big mirrored sunglasses, but she was like cartoon lip quivering.
Yeah, it was
through,
bad.
through a lot
guys.
of the time
It was
there.
bad and embarrassing.
But I'll say this for you: I was looking around, and there were a lot of people
there
crying.
were a lot of people
Okay,
crying.
we are jumping all over
We are
the
jumping
place.
ahead.
Let us do the narrative of how we ended
Okay.
up at the launch.
So the good news is that because I am a giant nerdy nerd, y'all should already know about the Falcon X launch. But we're going to recap in case we have anybody new joining us.
yeah, we had some questions about what the process of seeing a launch was going to be like and how to
Sure.
get tickets and all that stuff. So,
Sure.
So,
But let's talk about like what the Falcon Heavy was.
okay, let's
First
do
of all, for straight up,
is
because it still exists.
it didn't die?
out there.
It did not pass
No,
away.
it did not explode. Spoilers, Jared.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the Falcon Heavy, some of you may be familiar with the Falcon X rockets, which are SpaceX's kind of go-to rocket, and they have been hired repeatedly by NASA to sort of shoot those up to the International Space Station for refueling. And it's a pretty basic design. It's also a design that NASA can do, and they're driven by 9 Merlin engines.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcon Heavy has 27 of those engines
Yeah.
and 3 boosters, 2 side boosters and a central booster. The cool thing about the boosters is that they are all recycled from other Falcon launches, and the hope for this launch was that they would be able to land all 3 and then recycle them again. This, of course, allows the Falcon X and Falcon Heavy to cost something like $90 million instead of $1 billion a launch.
Yeah, when we arrived at NASA, they had kind of a screen with a live feed to SpaceX, and they had various scientists talking about the launch and what was important about it. And a point one of the engineers made is that these boosters are fueled with a mix of kerosene and what they call densified oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
So he was saying, that's not the expensive part.
Right.
The expensive part is that I think in the
the
past,
hardware, the
when
technology.
you shoot off a rocket, that's it. So
It's gone.
you have an item that a custom built for a specific purpose that you use once, and that's just not very efficient financially
Right.
speaking.
So the fact is, if we are ever going to do space travel on a larger scale, we're going to have to get equipment that we can land
Yeah.
and use again.
And something I didn't know, one of the SpaceX reps said basically that their stated mission statement is to have human beings living on other worlds,
Right.
which I didn't realize that was
Yeah.
kind of SpaceX's whole jam.
That is definitely their thing.
So,
They're very focused on Mars.
The SpaceX representative explicitly said that, yes, they're interested in innovating to make space travel more inexpensive, but for the express purpose of having humanity be a multi-planet species at some point.
Right. So, let's start at the very beginning.
Start at the very beginning.
A very good place to start. So it was very much luck that I explained Falcon Heavy to you guys, but I'd been following this story for 3 or 4 months. I mean, a long time, and I'd sort of heard rumblings about it before. So it just happened to happen that I mentioned it to y'all, and then like in the next couple days, they said yes, for sure, we're doing a launch.
Yeah.
And it just so happened that we were going to go down to Florida anyway.
And then you bought a monkey's paw at an old junk shop.
And it just so happened that the launch was scheduled for when we were going to be down in Florida.
Yeah.
So that happened.
Yeah, speaking
I
of
cried
which.
at work when I realized that, by the way. I had to get up and shut my door and have myself a good, couple tears about how excited I was. And then must have been awful for my coworkers for the last couple weeks because they would come in my office and they'd be like, so what's up? And I'm like, you've fallen into my trap. Now you're going to hear about space travel.
Well, and I think it's cool. I don't think anyone on the planet except maybe the scientists involved with the project are more into this than Leslie.
I'm very excited.
So it was a real emotional roller coaster of, is it going to happen? Is it not? Is it possible that it will overlap with our trip to Florida? Can we move our trip if it doesn't?
How fast can we get there?
Yeah.
You know, if it's the Saturday before we plan to go, could we just go? I mean, it was intense.
Yeah, which, by the way, if we sound a little different today, it's because we're crouched between two child-sized beds in the back room of my parents' house in Nokomis, Florida.
Yeah. You're hearing this straight from our linoleum floor.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful Nokomis, Florida.
Where we lugged our podcasting equipment.
Right. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. So we decided, yes, all right, we don't know when the launch is going to be, but we're going to go ahead and spend the money to get tickets.
Holy cow, what a fascinating process, because you get the tickets, but I've never bought tickets for something that didn't have a confirmed date before.
Right. You purchase the tickets for the event, and then they inform you when the event is. Sometimes very close to when the event occurs.
Yeah.
As was the case with this.
You pays your money, and you basically say, yeah, I'll show up when it is.
Why did you not finish you take your chances?
You pays your money, you take
show
your chances.
That's the saying.
You pays your money, and you hopes for the bests. Yeah.
Yeah, so we decided to go ahead and buy it. By the time we decided to go ahead and buy it, there was still a week to go, but most of the tickets had sold out.
Yeah.
Our choices were pretty limited, and we ended up actually being lucky and getting one of the last tickets for the Rocket Garden, which is on the Kennedy Space Center.
It's where they grow rockets.
Yes, it's where they plant tiny rocket seeds, and then it's actually where older rockets were retired, and it's a really pretty area.
It's like a big pointy junkyard.
Yeah, only gorgeous.
And I think we got, I don't know, they had a closest package. The closest one had the subtitle, Feel the Heat.
No, that was the closest. The closest packet was Feel the Heat.
Yeah.
And then there was VIP, and then closer. Then
like,
closer.
It was like Feel the Heat. Then it was like Wiggle with the Rumble.
It's not true.
And then it was like Thing in the Sky.
No. I mean, the cool thing was, okay, so we bought the tickets, and we got, because a lot of people ask me how this goes, so let's explain this how it goes. So you buy the ticket for the launch. You have no idea when the launch is going to be.
Yeah, they send you a decoder ring.
They told us about 3 days ahead of time what time the launch was going to be, and then the day before, they set the time. Now, where we're staying is about, on a good day, 2.5 hours away.
I think it's more like 3, even on a good day.
Yeah. It took us 5 hours to get there with the traffic.
Yeah, there were accidents, so...
But also just back-to-back traffic through that peninsula.
I mean, our route from where we are currently sitting to Kennedy Space Center involves either going through or circumventing both Tampa and Orlando.
Yeah.
So, busy places.
It was a goddamn mess, and I was losing my fucking mind. Because I thought for sure we were not going to make it. And I would be sobbing at the gates of the Kennedy Space Center.
Because when you buy the tickets, they FedEx, overnighted us.
They overnighted us a parking placard, which was neon pink.
Right. And it said on it, arrive 3 hours before the launch time. So arrive on or before your designated time.
Right. So our launch time, the launch time was originally 1:30 in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Which meant we had to be there at 10:30.
Right. So we left here at 6 in the morning,
yes,
thinking that was plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
It was not.
Plenty of time. It was not time.
Yeah, not at all.
So, but luckily, there was enough traffic outside of it that we were just within the group by the time we got there. Also, there were armadillos around there, which was a delightful surprise.
Right. Stay focused, Leslie.
Sorry.
The problem was we weren't sure, based on the very firm language on the parking pass and tickets they sent us, if we would be turned away. Because we've been to NASA in the past, and they have like a airport level, take your shoes off kind of security, going through a metal detector and being patted down and stuff. So, I thought it was Gesundheit. I thought it was perfectly possible that if we were late, they might turn us away.
Sorry, no. Yeah, security says you have to go.
But that did not happen.
That did not happen. There are definitely a lot of people just getting there as we
Another
just got
finger on Leslie's monkey paw.
Yes.
Fell forward, and we were allowed in.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, when you get to Cape Canaveral, they really put this thing pretty far out there because, as you can imagine, if something goes wrong with a rocket, it really goes wrong.
It explodes.
So when you turn to go to the Kennedy Space Center, you got another 7-8 miles of just road leading out onto the Cape.
Yeah. And there are bleacher sections out there closer.
Yeah.
That you could purchase for $400 ticket.
Yeah.
Which we will do someday.
Which we might save up for whatever.
Yeah.
It was
worth it.
Yeah. We're getting to it, but
so in our story we have now arrived at Kennedy Space Center. Leslie's crying in line.
They let us in. The parking lot is overstuffed, so we ended up parking next to this sort of murky brown bayou where we had seen crocodiles for alligators.
Slightly concerned about the alligators as I exited the car, and the armadillos.
Yep. So they park us on a little side area outside the parking lot. We were still there 2.5 hours early, and the giant parking lot was already full.
Yeah, it was the day was such this weird combination of excitement and not boredom, because I definitely wasn't bored.
It was terror?
Just waiting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we were both hit with a wave of relief once we realized we would be let into the complex.
Yes.
So we got in. We went through security. We got in. There was such a hilarious... cornucopia of nerd shirts at this thing.
Just an abundance, overflowing with nerd. And it was so exciting because I knew almost all the nerd shirts, and then sometimes I would see a shirt that was clearly a nerd reference, and I was like, oh, I don't know what that is.
But these are all people who paid extra and cleared their calendars to show up for this thing. Yeah. So it was a very... it was a very chummy sort of...
everybody was just excited to be there and excited to just be part of it. It was a really cool atmosphere to be in. They had the new rover out, which kind of looked like a giant blue Humvee with solar panels, which was kind of cool.
This is maybe a strange comparison, but I compare it to when I went to an Iron Maiden conference. Yeah, conference, Jared. A concert, an Iron Maiden concert.
What were the panels like at the Iron Maiden conference?
It was The Trooper and Run to the Hills and Fear of the Dark.
Yeah.
666. But it was that atmosphere of, hey, look, I'm seeing every heavy metal shirt that I can think of, and there's this weird camaraderie that's okay, we are part of the same small community of enthusiasts for this one very specific thing. That was the same feeling. Yeah, this is your tribe. That was the same feeling at NASA that day. Looking around, and I mean, geez, people in Tesla shirts and SpaceX and NASA. And
I saw several Overwatch shirts.
Oh yeah, I saw Doctor Who. I was wearing a Hello from the Magic Tavern podcast shirt.
There were several Cornetto trilogy shirts, which I thought was an interesting overlap.
I'm sometimes more introverted, but it was the kind of atmosphere where you felt like you could just strike up a conversation with anybody. Leslie kept taking pictures of tiny toddlers and children dressed as astronauts.
So many, and they were so adorable.
It was adorable and sort of inspiring.
Yes.
Kind of these future scientists.
Look at, these are the future, and we're going to watch the future, and it's the future. It was great.
So we were walking around NASA, which is already a pretty good day.
Right.
But the anxiety after we got there was the launch got pushed back 2 or 3 times.
It got pushed back once, and we were like, okay, yeah, whatever. And then it got pushed back a second time, and we were like, ooh. And then it got pushed the third time to the last slot. If it got pushed back again, it was not
It was going to be canceled. Because they have a launch window, and then within that window there are time slots. I think it was 2 to 4.
Mm-hmm.
So
2 to 5. So the last one was 4:15.
Okay, so it got pushed back to the last slot. And if they cancel it, they just cancel it. They're
They're done. Yeah.
I mean, sorry for the crowd, but if the weather conditions weren't right, they were just going to cancel it. And it had to do with upper level atmosphere winds they were worried about.
The winds up high near the nose cone were not
Nose winds.
cooperating. Your nose winds.
Yeah. So even once we got into the place, there was still quite a serious chance that the whole thing was going to be scrubbed because of weather. But lo and behold.
But no, yeah, the last.
Another finger on Leslie's space monkey paw.
Indeed.
Look, I have a narrative through line now.
I like it. Yeah, so we got a really awesome spot on the grounds too,
so awesome.
in shade. It was great. I will say that Jared did convince me to buy a lot of Merc while I was.
Oh, well, how often are we at
compromised.
NASA?
I'm gonna wear this jacket like every day. I don't care how cold it gets back in Ohio.
Leslie, I found this jacket, and Leslie got wide-eyed when she saw it, but it is a shiny black sort of vinyl bomber jacket, and on the front it has a NASA patch and an Apollo 2 patch and an American flag, and then the back has every mission patch from every Apollo.
It's kind of
mission.
tacky, but I love it.
It's also awesome.
I love it. Anyway,
we'll post a picture.
So yeah, so one of the best things about the spot that we got was they had a huge screen where they were doing interviews and they were doing the countdown and they were showing the actual launch really close up.
Right.
So we got a spot that was not only in the shade, but also we could see this screen and see where it was going to clear the buildings.
Yeah. So since we didn't get the closest package, we didn't have a view of the actual launch pad.
Right.
But we had a giant screen with a live feed of the launch pad, and we knew where to look. And all it had to do was clear the tree lines, and then of course you couldn't miss it.
Yeah. Then it was this beautiful, bright, like light in the sky.
I want to point out that it was a very sort of festival atmosphere, but NASA has a DJ
that was kind of cute.
Plays in the park and like gives you updates and checks in with mission control. But think like a radio morning show DJ. Okay, it was a little classier than that.
I know your first question, audience. Your first question is, did they play the final countdown? And the answer is yes.
Yeah.
They did play the final
countdown. I can't believe
countdown.
I didn't see it coming, but at one point he's like, well, we've got 20 minutes. At some point, SpaceX will take over the feed. So it's not exactly the final countdown, but I think it's close enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was pretty excited.
That was pretty great. So then SpaceX took over the countdown, and we kind of got a rundown on what they were doing. They were fueling at that point.
SpaceX had their shit together to make this sort of a media package to have people be excited about it.
Say what you will about Elon Musk, he understands how important the show
He's a lizard man.
He's a lizard man. But he understands how important show is, how important,
Leslie, the word you're looking for is pageantry.
The pageantry of it. He understands. I think NASA kind of lost sight of that.
Yeah, they really had a hold of it in the 60s.
They really had a hold of it.
Getting the public involved in sort of a patriotic pride kind of way about space travel and exploration.
They kind of lost it.
Yeah, I think you're right.
They really went to well, we want to be taken seriously. We're serious science. And you can do both.
You sure can.
You can do both.
Especially when the science you're doing is objectively awesome.
Yeah.
It's
the coolest thing on the planet.
You don't exactly need the smartest marketing whiz of all time to find a way to make shooting the biggest rocket of all time into space with a convertible in it.
I will say that obviously SpaceX has good marketing, though.
Yeah, they do.
Clearly.
But I loved that the people SpaceX put on the screen before the launch, they were not PR people. They were engineers and software.
But they were really good at talking.
They were, but they were also... They just exuded nerd credibility.
Yeah.
And I think that was a cool way to do that.
It really was. So, so they gave us some rundown on what was in the Falcon.
Yeah, what they were fueling it with, what it was doing.
And as some of you will know, even if you just listen to this show and don't get anything else, one of the things that was in it was the cherry red.
Right, which
Tesla
they described
Roadster.
as Elon's cherry red.
It
Tesla
apparently
Roadster.
is.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, if you go out there, there's a live feed for as long as they can get it of the what they're calling. What was his name?
Starman.
Starman, yeah. Starman strapped into...
Which is the mannequin wearing the SpaceX suit strapped into the Roadster. And the camera view is right over his shoulder. Mm-hmm. So at one point you could see the Earth through the windshield over the shoulder of Starman. And on the dash, there was a Hitchhiker's Guide reference. The navigation just said, "Don't panic" on it.
which is just such a great visual.
Yeah, and one of the things, speaking of the science fiction connection, they also sent what do I want to call it? A product, a disc, an archive from the ARC project, which is inspired by Isaac Asimov's writings. They sent the Foundation series, Asimov's Foundation series, along with the Roadster. So I thought that was a cool touch, and a plaque.
Very cool.
And a plaque with all the SpaceX employees' names on it. Over 6,000 employees were listed on this plaque.
Now, I did some research on this because I was a little confused. Because, and I think this is actually just an issue with space journalism.
Space journalism. I love that idea.
Because there are space journalists who, huge respect for what they do.
Respect.
Just really, they're just awesome, and they know what the hell they're talking about, and they can get into the technical stuff, and it's awesome. But a lot of people just do space journalism. Like, a lot of journalists just try to report spacey stuff.
Is that what we're doing? Wait, are you going to criticize us?
I mean, no. I think people who are generally journalists and they try to just cover space stuff like that. So they'll just like throw facts out and just not back them up. So I had to do actually a lot of research to figure out. So some places said that the Falcon Heavy is going to Mars. Some said it's going to intersect with Mars.
Yeah, this was confusing me, yeah.
Yeah, so basically, this test flight was to determine can they shoot the Falcon Heavy at Mars and get it to Mars? So can the trajectory, once it leaves Earth's atmosphere, would that end up at Mars? And as of last night, not only is it going to end up at Mars, it's actually going to overshoot it and end up in the asteroid belt, which is great news.
Oh.
That's great news. They don't actually want it to hit Mars because none of it is sterilized.
Oh.
So this was the same reason why they scrapped Cassini.
So they don't want all our Earth poop all over it.
Yes, because Cassini wasn't sterilized. They found a portion that the Cassini was looking at that might sustain life. So on the off chance that there is life on Mars, they do not want to crash anything into it before they get there. They don't kill everything.
Well, what an unusual amount of self-reflective caution from us, humanity.
Well, this is a big thing for NASA. They have a whole position and department that is just this.
Wow.
Just what goes out of our atmosphere and what goes into our atmosphere. And actually, a lot of, again, with the crappy journalism, a lot of journalists were making fun of it last year because they were looking for a new director.
Yeah.
And it's like the director of external, like, atmospheric something or other. They're like, they're hiring someone to talk to aliens. No, they're not. They're hiring someone that makes sure that space pneumonia doesn't come back to Earth. Like, this is important stuff.
Well, and imagine how dumb we would feel if we found an ecosystem full of fragile microbes, and the first thing we did was get our
launch a roadster into
Earth
it.
microbes all over it, suddenly wiping them out with an invasive species.
Just crash a cherry red car into it.
Yeah. Ugh.
So right now it looks like it is going to basically orbit around us and then around the sun.
Yeah.
But it is not going to cross Mars's orbit.
One of the scientists said that they estimate that the Roadster could be circling the sun for 1 billion years with a B.
Billion
years. So let's get to the actual moment, Leslie.
Yeah. Okay. So
the vroomy boom boom moment.
We're set up. And the countdown starts. I'm weeping.
Yes, I had an arm around Leslie's shoulders, and she was shivery weeping as the countdown started.
It was bad. I was so excited.
And I have to admit, I had some tears streaming down my face, too.
I mean, there's something about, like, I am not a very spiritual person. You know this about me. But to me, this is what is best about humanity. Like, this is an example of humanity at its best. Like, when we are doing good, that is an example of humanity at its best. When we are using all of our creativity and our intelligence and our stick-to-itedness and our working together, when we are using all of that to, like, attempt to touch infinity.
Yeah, sweet.
That is amazing.
Sweetheart, you have a published book of space poetry.
Oh, yeah, I do.
So, yes, I do know this about.
Yeah, you might know that. I may have done my thesis on this, I
yes.
think.
Leslie's book of poetry, which, by the way, sorry, Leslie, but it's very good, and I have to recommend it. It's called An Inheritance of Stone, and it just has a picture of Earth from orbit with a tiny astronaut above it. So,
it does. If
you feel spiritual about space travel, you might want to check that out.
I do. I feel, ugh.
Also, I mean, we're with a crowd of, I don't know, 300-400 people. we get to the countdown, and there's just silence. It's this beautiful, bright, sunny day, palm trees. It's probably 75 degrees. It's been in this festival atmosphere of people running around, kids screaming and playing, and then we get to this countdown, and there is just silence. Just silence and sort of silent reverence, and people are kind of looking to the sky and pointing to the direction we know the pad is. And we see the engines ignite on the screen, and then, boy, I don't know.
And then you hear the roar of it.
On the screen
On the
at
screen
first.
at first, and then over the buildings.
Right, and they told us up front, you would see it, and then you would hear it, and then you would feel it. And that was really what I experienced. Because it took the sound a minute to get to us, but we saw the rocket clear the tree line, yeah.
And everybody, there was like this group inhalation of breath, and at that point, I'm a writer. I spend a lot of my life with words in my head, and this was one of the few moments in my life where I just had nothing, just nothing. Yeah,
I'm with you. And I had a camera, and I thought about taking a picture, and I snapped a couple when it was far away, but I really couldn't do anything but stare at it. I had taken my sunglasses off, and something that surprised me it was actually kind of hard to look at.
It was very bright.
The burn on the engines, it was like a little second sun just above the buildings.
Yeah.
And we watched it not corkscrew,
just
but
shoot straight
up. It seemed to be arcing away from us, and it left this sort of interesting, kind of a cursive signature look of white puffy smoke behind that stayed hanging above the buildings.
And eventually, and at this point, I'm crying so hard I can't breathe. I cannot inhale, like a child who has fallen off her bike.
And I took a look around, and Leslie was not alone in that.
I was not alone.
No, not at all.
I glanced aside at one point, and there were several people.
Yeah. So, boy, it was very, very moving, and, there was a whole bunch of applause, and then...
So at that point, so then we turned back to the screen, and we were able to see the two boosters disconnect and land almost simultaneously.
Well, they were giving us a play-by-play of what was happening when the two side boosters disengaged from the main rocket, but also I saw them... when they, as they came back down, occasionally they would burn their engines to slow down, and I saw the two side-by-side engines,
we saw them enter the atmosphere.
Yeah, so we got to see the two, the two boosters returning as well.
The roar of the crowd when they landed was just amazing. Like, people were so excited.
Yeah, the central booster, I know it went missing, but I mean, by all measures, it was a very, very successful launch.
The report I saw was that the secondary engine to slow it down did not failed to fire, and it crashed into the ocean at about 300 miles per hour. Now, that does not mean it's destroyed, because this happened with an earlier launch earlier in the week, and that one was fine. They said that one might fly again. Yeah.
So it was really another step toward more affordable, more sustainable space travel, and another part of the puzzle to getting actual human beings to Mars.
So at the end of this story, I'm pulling myself together. We've watched the launch.
Oh God, yeah.
I've got my composure. I'm breathing heavily, and then they play David Bowie's
Life on Mars.
And I fucking lost it.
That killed all of us.
I just had to sit on the ground.
They showed, the control room at SpaceX, all the employees cheering, and then just Life on Mars started blaring over the speakers.
And then they cut to Starman in his car above the Earth, and I was just like, oh, God damn it.
Yeah. So, this goes without saying, but if you ever have the opportunity to go see a launch, you get jerked around a whole lot because the science comes first. It's not there for spectators, but I mean, it is so worth it.
It is so worth it. It was amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, life-changing. I don't think that's an exaggeration.
Yeah, if we hadn't gone, you wouldn't get your fancy jacket. We'll post a picture.
So that's it. So we'll have more news at the end of the week, but we wanted to sort of walk you guys through what that looks like, because we had no idea what we were in for at the beginning of this week.
No, I mean, I think we were both flabbergasted that it was even possible to go see a rocket launch, but...
especially this rocket launch, which is historic.
Yeah, but boy, we had no idea what would go into it, so we were excited to share that with you guys.
Yeah, it was amazing. All right. Well... Have a great week, everybody. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. You can send us an email at newsgoblins@gmail.com.
Yeah. Leave us a review on iTunes and spend some time on YouTube just learning more about this particular mission and space travel in general because it is freaking awesome.
It's freaking awesome. Okay, everybody, have a great week. Bye.
Bye, guys.